Namaskar and welcome to yet another episode of BONGFeed.com's Ong Bong Chong. As always, I am Gaurav. Calcutta, they say, is an emotion, ekti abeg. To steal from Veer Sanghvi's now viral quote that has been plastered all over social media for the last few years, if you want a city with a soul, come to Calcutta. And that soul inhabits a city which has been the stage of a very unique history over the last few hundred years. It has been at the crossroads of events that have shaped the world we know today. While we all love the city of ours, seldom do we look at its history, the brick walls, the Gari Baranda wala badi, the winding goli ghuji, the ghats, through the sharp lenses of academic rigor. Thus, we arrive at our guests today. They are a couple who share a lust for the city of Calcutta like few I have seen before. One is a Bilet Phirot archaeologist with a PhD who loves the history of Calcutta, and the other is an accomplished anthropologist with an interest in translations. So while one deciphers the hidden secrets in brick and mortar of the city, the other delves deep into the human lives and society that inhabits those structures. It's an honor to have with us today the lovely couple who founded Immersive Trails, Chelsea McGill and Tathagata Nyogi. Tathagata and Chelsea, welcome to BONGFeed.com's Ong Bong Chong. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here.
So it's really fun to have you both. I have a ton of very weird questions for you. Weird because there's a personal curiosity I have about the work that you do. It's extremely exemplary what you do and how much you know about the city of Calcutta because it's pretty frightening how little we know about the city that we are born in. Now, to start off with, let's start with what you have done. So you founded Immersive Trails, which is now more than 500 walks old, and you have basically gone and served more than 5,000 people who have gone with you on walks exploring the city. So how did Immersive Trails begin?
You can answer.
I'll start and then Chelsea can maybe jump in. So basically, I finished my PhD in archaeology at Exeter in 2017, and while I was finishing that, I was writing up my thesis. We were working in Kerala, both of us, in normal academic jobs, and we got a bit disillusioned by how the academia works in archaeology, history, and heritage, and all of that, because whatever we discover, whatever we research, remains within the cocoon of the academic community. It does not get out and reach out to the common people. And if you don't share your knowledge with the common people, non-academics, then you cannot expect to have heritage awareness or understanding. So that basically prompted us to leave our jobs there and take this gamble to come back to Calcutta and start something which we named then Heritage Walk Calcutta, because we realized that we can do the research and create really engaging experiences, walking tour experiences, through which we can reach out to people with our academic research and make people aware and interested in the city's history. Chelsea can take over, I think.
Yeah, so we also thought that there must be a way to do ethical tourism with minority groups and underrepresented groups. And if you read the academic literature, a lot of the studies on tourism and related things shows that much of it is exploitative. And we said there must be a way to do it without exploiting people as much as possible. So that's kind of our basic ethos as a company.
Right. That's a unique ethos for a company which at the end of the day, which is a business, but to balance business and the ethics of, especially in industry where everybody else, I'm pretty sure, is not as ethical as you guys are, is something that is very surprising. Now, the next question is, given both of your academic backgrounds, and like you said, generally once you delve that deep into academics, it's very hard to extricate yourself and then come into the real world of, kind of layman. So why Calcutta? Why not other global cities which have longer histories? Because Calcutta is pretty new compared to the rest of the world cities, and or better maintained infrastructurally, or where you have at least more governmental support for heritage preservation. Because we know we are woefully lacking in that here. So why Calcutta? Tathagata, let's hear from you.
Right. So thank you for that question. I think because there is there are like our infrastructure is in shambles in terms of heritage, and because this is a city I was born in, and also because there is so much to do in Calcutta, because not much has been done. We wanted to basically, I mean, yes, it's a business, but we also wanted to make an impact with the business. And we thought that we will be able to make an impact in Calcutta because we'll be able to maybe pioneer certain ways of thinking and reaching out to people about heritage and history and infrastructure and all of that. So we wanted to take that challenge up, and because we thought that we can make a positive impact in the city that I knew well from my birth and I was born, and because there is a lack of fresh thought, new thought, that's why we wanted to take up this challenge.
Yeah, and also Calcutta is important historically. It was the capital of the British Empire east of Cape Town for a while. All the East India Company's territories east of Cape Town. Then it was the capital of the British Empire in India. And it has been really important in terms of trade and things like that. But because of its history in the last 100 years or so, it hasn't really been, I mean, it's been studied from an academic perspective, but it's been kind of overlooked in other ways. So we wanted to really draw out the importance of Calcutta to show people and to really connect people with the heritage in that way.
Imagine that. Imagine saying that to an audience, which I'm pretty sure is majorly from Calcutta. I'm pretty sure everybody like super happy with what you're doing. Now here comes the meatier part of this session today. I'm guessing like most Calcuttans, both of you also have favorite corners of the city. As in, we all think when you live in a city for long enough, you all have my secret place of the city, right? That one area, that one cafe, that one shop, that one corner of a road, which is yours. So what are those, and what's a unique anecdote or a connect that you individually feel? This time I'll start with Chelsea.
I think maybe for both of us, our favorite place in the city is actually Old Chinatown, because we've been doing we've been doing anthropological ethnographic research in the area for almost 4 years now. And we've just had a very good experience working with the Cantonese community. They've been very welcoming. And honestly, we really, really enjoy visiting there. It's been one of the easiest communities to work with in terms of doing research, but also they've just been very welcoming and very, very nice to us. So I think that would be my favorite part of the city.
Yeah, I mean I agree that's my favorite part of the city as well, and we really love the way that the community accepted us almost as an extended family, like some members of the community. And when it's a fascinating place to go and try to understand Chinatown, because Chinatown is misunderstood because of how it is represented in literature and movies. It's always represented as a place where shady things happen, but that's not the case. There are people who are persecuted in the 1960s because of an India-China border dispute, and they're trying to now working. They're hardworking people running their own businesses and all of that, and they're nice human beings. So that's what we enjoy the most. In terms of another part of the city that I personally like is the riverside, mostly the riverside in North Calcutta, because there's so much history that the river actually brought into the city in terms of trade and connections and all of that. And we are neglecting the riverside, unfortunately. But if you walk from Bagbazaar down to say Nimtala, there are several very quiet, very shaded by trees and very serene ghats where you can sit and spend like hours without getting disturbed. So I think that is something worth noting, because Calcutta, we generally think about is a city of cacophony and there's a lot of honking and all of that. But go to the riverside and try sitting in one of these quieter ghats, and you'll be amazed at how good you feel.
This especially makes me happy because I'm pretty sure I spent most of my college years on the ghats of Nimtala and all. because those are literally, that is the best place to just laze around on evenings with your friends.
Mhm.
Right. So again, this is again from a very personal wish list, because this is a question that I have grappled with for anybody who wants to know more about their own city. And I wanted to ask you, because you're academicians and specialists in this particular area, researching. So how do you research about a particular place or building or street of a city like Calcutta? What archives, methods, or sources do you go for, and how difficult are these researches? Because I'm pretty sure if it was easy, then everybody else would be doing it. It's not. So what are your methods?
Well, I think it depends on what the topic is. So let's say you're trying to find information about a specific neighborhood. Um, Calcutta, unfortunately, has not really had many neighborhoods be studied as a neighborhood and its history recorded. A few of the neighborhoods have, like, there's some stuff on College Street, there's some stuff on Bagh Bazaar, Show Bazaar area, there's some stuff on Dalhousie, but that's about it. So the rest of the neighborhoods, that you can't find a book or something like that where you can learn about this. So what we usually do is we usually go talk to people, the older people in the locality, the people who've been living there for a long time or whose families have been living there for a long time. And we just ask them, like, so what do you know about the history of the neighborhood? And often we hear important things. Sometimes the dates are not correct. Sometimes the people are not correct, but that's fine. We can find things in the archive once we actually have some information to start with. Do you want to jump in?
So yeah, I have one
Yeah.
question. So this is
Yeah.
more about oral history, even though like Calcutta has been the, like you said, the east of Cape Town, it was one of the capitals of the British Empire. But what you're saying, that means is we haven't done, even as a metropolitan city, well enough to document our past history. And even now it's more of an oral history than rather a well documented metropolis.
Well, I won't say that Calcutta is not well documented. Calcutta is actually very well documented because the British Raj and the British East India Company made sure to document each and every bit of their capital, because it meant that more well it would, like, if you document each and every house and the population and all of that, that means that you can collect taxes efficiently, right? So that was the motivation. And you can also do projects like you can start sanitation system and all of those things. So Calcutta is actually very well documented. That is not the problem. The problem is that where these documents are. Most of these documents are scattered in throughout the world. Many of them are in the British Library and very very expensive to access. Um, and and there are stuff in the West Bengal State Archive and the National Archives in India, and then the KMC archives and all of that, which again are not digitized. So you have to physically go there and access, and sometimes it takes time. So it takes a lot of time to do the research for that reason, because you have to keep on running between these different places. And also, sometimes we think, like, when we talk to people, um, we get information about, because we need to understand these documentations are all official work. So that's the official perspective of a different neighborhood, a specific neighborhood. And the people's perspective is also important, because people living in that neighborhood for generations, they have their own version of history, and that is how they connect with that neighborhood. So we try to bring these two together, the recorded history and the oral history. Um, and that is what takes a lot of time for us to
Mhm.
research. So one of the just one example, our Second World War walk took like more than a year of research in various archives and all of that, and it took the right investments to make. So we have to buy archive access, and for a small company, sometimes it's huge expense. So we needed to do that, and so gradually, and all our walking tours that we create, all the experiences we create, are actually ongoing research. So moment we get new information, we add it to that and all of that. So yeah, I mean, it is difficult, but you need to be persistent. If you're persistent, then you'll be able to find things. There are things out
Mhm. Yeah, there are things out there, and the problem is that most of so the things which have in the until the very, very recent past, in the last 2 years or so, that were digitally available were generally the British records, so English language records. Now there's a lot of Bengali material that we can access, but again, it's more difficult to find things in that because you can't do a search, for example. So you have to actually go through and read it. There's also other language sources which neither of us can read, for example. So if there's Urdu sources on Calcutta, which there are, neither of us can read Urdu. So basically, the oral history is an important aspect because it lets us figure out what exactly to look for when, so that we can comb through all of these sources to understand more.
Also, family
So,
history, because everyone's family history is important. Like, even though you may think that you're insignificant, your family had a role to play in building the city. So we try to get family history as much as possible.
perfect. So to the audience who's listening in today, or if you're watching this video later, 1, 5, 10 years away from now, these are the two people that you get in touch with if you want to help out with the documentation. Help is always needed, and I think this. So again, I think one of the reasons that is this is the condition of the things is because most of these are not incentivized properly by any of the authorities, right? So there's no incentive to document or go ahead with it, right? So coming to the following on from there, so how can a layman who loves their city like their own mother, how can a layman contribute to conserving the history and the heritage of a sprawling and overcrowded city like Calcutta, where so the problem with a city like Calcutta, which is still growing at a rapid pace, is sometimes the preservation of history takes a backseat to the immediacy of problems like basic amenities. So if there's an old house which some celebrity was born in, you are not going to wait for that to be saved if there's a sewer line that you need to dig out of it. So what can a common man like us or anybody who's listening in, how can we contribute to conserving the history of Calcutta or the heritage of Calcutta?
So basically, we need to come out of the idea that you need a degree to be able to do things. So that is, I think, the biggest mental barrier that we have. The degree gives you a specialization in something, but for something like heritage recording, you can learn it without having a degree. You just need to have the proper interest, and you need to have the proper intention to learn and have a sense of history, basically. So that's what we try to teach people, and you can pick up basic skills, like you can go out with your phone, take some photographs, inquire in the local community about who certain houses or certain spaces belong to, and you can basically contribute to the conversation. You can make, like, any photograph that you're putting out, you're making a tangible record of that. You can basically, your phones, everyone's phones have GPSs now, so you can pinpoint the location. You can be trained into how you can do basic like architectural recording and all of that. So all of that can be trained. And once the thing is that you need to have the intention and patience to learn it, but it's not that difficult. And also you need to come out of that inferiority complex that I don't have a degree and that's why I'm not important. That's not true. In fact, I'll give you this example. At the risk of going over time, but I'll give you this example that in England, there is a scheme called the Portable Antiquities Scheme. And there are similar schemes all throughout Europe, even Japan and all of that. So the Portable Antiquities Scheme, the idea is that if you are maybe taking a walk somewhere in the mountains or something, somewhere in the grassland, and you suddenly happen to find an old thing or something that looks to you that it's an old thing. So what you do is, you take a photograph of that, you describe it on a form, it's all online. You describe that on a form and you basically submit that, and experts have a look at that, and they basically tell you, like, if that goes in the record, and they tell you how much, like, if it's actually old or not. And if it's really, really valuable, say a gold ring that was worn by some British monarch or something that you have found, then they will basically pay you the exact value of it and buy it from you and to put it in the museum. Or otherwise you have the ownership of that, and you also put it on the record so that all the people can have, like, put these things, like, have this open database where people can participate in putting their heritage in there, and that way that people feel a connection to their past. I think what we are missing is that single database, which needs to be there and which needs to empower people to to engage with their past in meaningful ways, and to have that sense of ownership of their past. And from our end, we run workshops. So, Chelsea, can.
Yeah, so we run workshops which teach you how to do these basic documentation. So, how to approach documenting a neighborhood, how to approach documenting a building, these sorts of things. So, yeah, we run those workshops quite frequently through our academy, which we are debuting this month. And also, just to point out the I mean, as he said, it's not required that you have a degree. And in fact, part of the problem is the disconnect between people who do not have a degree but have interest in it and their lack of access to people who do have degrees and can tell them more. So that's a big disconnect and a problem, especially in India, from what we've seen.
Right. So, just continuing from there for one more moment. So, have you guys received any support from the authorities, or if you haven't, then why do you think it is? Because it's not important enough, or there's no value in doing this? Because honestly, I have seen in recent times. So I have grown up in Calcutta. Tathagata probably will agree with me. In the 80s and 90s, most of these historical places were in shambles, complete shambles. For example, Swami Vivekananda's birthplace, which is like walking distance from my place, I used to go there, and we basically had to quarrel with their descendants to get to see where he was born. But then over the last 20 years, I think there's been an exceptional, at least we have seen some progress in terms of at least preserving some of those houses and those famous roads. And like, for example, starts here. I have especially seen in the northern part of the city where older buildings are. But do you think that people are now warming up to the fact that preserving heritage can also be kind of add to your tourism coffers and stuff like that? Or do you think that people are still, as in the people who, the powers that be, they are still unaware of how valuable these things actually are?
I
That's
think that you can start.
I'm just saying that's a bit of a difficult question to answer succinctly.
So, no, but have you guys ever come across somebody who was genuinely interested from the establishment who wanted to help out with you, or if you received that kind of help?
Uh, well, uh, so just just to answer your first question, yes, the authorities are waking up to the fact that there are certain things of history and heritage that can have a tourism potential, but still the thought is pretty like they're waking up very slow to it. And one of the reasons for this is our heritage laws that we have are pretty archaic. And I keep on saying that in every session that I have live, that our heritage laws are really archaic, and they need to change. They need to become more modern to allow more repurposing of heritage and give more power to the owners of the house and knowledge about how to repurpose history. So there is a disconnect between the owners and the government. Um, in terms of here, have we received any help? I don't. We haven't, unfortunately. We try to reach out to Single Heritage Commission with our plans about how to at least put up plaques and all of that. Those were blocked by interested parties with self-interest. And we tried to reach out to West Bengal Tourism because we had a plan about trying to develop different districts into different tourism, like heritage tourism potentials in different districts. Unfortunately, the phone calls always ended with the receptionist of the tourism secretary, and we never heard back for an appointment. So this is, it's very unfortunate, but this has been the case. So what we have done entirely by ourselves.
Right.
Which,
So again,
gives us a lot of freedom, but also it would be nice to have some government support in some places.
yeah, at least if nothing else, and at least a pat on the back in the form of a poster with your name or something about in the tourism documentation, right? So now coming to your individual parts. So which part of the city do you think is the least explored and has some of the most hidden, fun historical things that we often ignore? Chelsea?
Well, I think it's important to preface this with saying that I do have a walk in this area. Um, but the area between Bobazar and Dormitola is very unexplored. It's quite important. There have been a lot of people who have lived there that were very important. So my walk discusses a lot of people from the Victorian period and what they did, scientists and journalists and things like that. So I think that is a very unexplored part of the city. I won't say it's the most unexplored because that could go to a lot of different areas, but I do think it needs to be covered more.
Tathagata?
It's a difficult question to answer, but I think the specific areas which we demarcate as Muslim areas of the city, because there is a stigma about going there and all of that. So the area around Akoda Mosque, people only go there for the Zakaria street food during iftar. But there is a lot of things to explore there. There are a lot of craft communities there, and then also Metia Buruj and also Raja Bajar, and all of these areas, I would say,
Park Circus.
Park Circus and all of that. So where there is a stigma about it because of the area being a Muslim majority area, but these are some of the oldest areas in the city as well. So one needs to properly explore these places and make them accessible.
Also, the old refugee colonies. Those are generally not explored at all, but they're very
And those
important.
are around?
The old refugee colonies that came up after partition.
So
Right.
mostly around Jadavpur area.
Around Jadavpur. Okay. Right. So this is continuing from what Chelsea just mentioned, that there have been many famous people who have inhabited the area between Bobazar and Dharmatola. So this is a purely anthropological question. And since given that Calcutta has produced some of the intellectual giants of the country and maybe even the world, who is your favorite Calcuttan from the annals of the city's history across the history of Calcutta? So I'll start with Chelsea.
My favorite is probably Shishir Kumar Ghosh, who was one of the founders of Amrita Bazar Patrika, and he was just the most snarky but hard-hitting journalist you could ever meet, and like he really basically told truth to power. And in a lot of ways, and he was just very, very important in terms of the politics and things during the late Victorian period in Kolkata. And also on the side, he also brought seances and planchettes to the public attention in Bengal. So, yeah, he's fascinating.
Yeah. So for me, it's again a difficult question, but so on the dark side, I would say Troiloko. Troiloko was a serial killer who is now famous because of Sunday Suspense Beats work and all that, and our Martin Mayhem walk. But Troiloko basically, with her intellect, I mean, yes, she was a murderer, but she got out in and out she fooled the police, duped the police for 20 years, which was very unique as a female serial killer to be active for such a long time in Kolkata in the 1800s. So that's on the dark side. On the brighter side, I would say, and I'm not saying that because today is Netaji's birthday, but I would say it's Subhash Chandra Bose. It's very, very cliche, but I do admire him quite a lot, and admire his courage and his appreciate and admire his ability and will to take risks.
Right. So this is a question that comes out from this question, and I hadn't prepared for this, but this is something that I came up with now. So Calcutta generally is synonymous with two movements. One is the Bhakti movement of So that's a religious stream that started from Bengal, and then Ramakrishna Dev carried ahead Vivekananda and all that. So that's a religious, spiritual aspect of the city. On the other hand, you have the finer arts, music, cinema, literature, Rabindranath Tagore, and all of that. So how much of your walks are built also around these two aspects, the spiritual aspects and also the finer arts and literature and music stuff?
I would say they come in for most of the walks in little bits. So we don't have one that is just on literature or something like that. But some art and publishing and stuff comes up in my Victorian walk. Um, my husband's walk on the which we call Bengal Rising is it discusses a lot of the fine arts as well. Um, I would say that this comes up in little bits and pieces. I would like to do a walk or tour of some sort on the Bhakti movement because religion is one of my interests, and that possibly will be coming up soon. Let's see what happens. But yeah, so that's my answer. Do you want to add anything, dear?
Yeah, so I am working on a walk on theater as well as cinema houses. Now these have to be virtual walks because cinema houses, most of them, as you know, are in terrible shape, and it's not very easy to access. But for the theaters, I am at least planning to make that physical and virtual. So those are on the cards.
Right. So the next one is, during all these years, when you have taken more than 5,000 guests to through your walks, what is the one most memorable, funny, weird memory of a tour or a particular guest that you have? I'll start with Tathagata this time.
Um, so basically, there are a lot, but I would say the one that we did very early on in our, like in March 2017, so right after we started. So we get a phone call from Mumbai from a travel agent there saying that they are sending 20 school children from Mumbai to Calcutta, high school children, and they want to explore Calcutta and all of that. So I said okay, but and they also wanted to explore a specific area of the city which is really busy, and they didn't want to start early. So we were okay. We said okay, but they assured that they're Indian kids, so they know how to cross streets and all of that. And we are supposed to meet them in the hotel they were staying. So we went and met them in the hotel they were staying in the morning, and lo and behold, they're all American kids. They were all from San Francisco, had never come to India before. All their
They've been here for
chaperones,
2 days.
yeah, they are just in India for a couple of days by that time, and it was just 20 American kids with no clue about what they're doing and where they're going in the busiest and busy of streets in Calcutta at the rush hour. It was a weekday. That I would say, and then we asked them basically, why did they not tell us that these are American kids? Because then we would have prepared better and suggested some other timings and all of that. So basically, what happened is they thought we were going to fleece them if we told them that they told us that they're Americans, we're going to ask for more money, which we don't do. We don't have a differential pricing. We have same pricing for everyone, even today. Um, so yeah, I mean that was funny and annoying at that time, but looking back at it now, it was incredibly funny, even though a logistical nightmare.
So it was babysitting for a day in the middle of a busy work day in Calcutta.
Yeah.
Chelsea?
So the one that was the most confusing to me was again very early on. We had somebody come from somewhere in Western India, I think, either or Northern India, and she booked the Chinatown walk. She shows up about 20-30 minutes late for the walk, first of all. And we had not yet created a policy which said we will only wait for 5 minutes for you. So we were waiting, and she kept calling and saying, "Oh, I'm 5 minutes away. I'm 5 minutes away." And she eventually came. And then she refused to go into any of the Chinese temples because they were not Hindu temples. So I was like, this walk is just temples, really. So if you don't go in, you're missing almost everything. And she said, "Yeah, that's okay. I'll just stand outside." And then I offered to give her money back if she left part way when I offered it. And she said, "No, it's okay. I'll just stand outside." And then she finally, after the walk, asked for her money back. And I said, "No, because you didn't take the opportunity when I asked you to."
Okay, we have confused people everywhere then. So before we go on to the final section, there's one last question that I had. Other than I know that you guys travel a lot and you just came back from a trip from Bishnupur, and thank you so much. I know both of you are totally drained, so thank you so much for doing this. So other than Calcutta, the rest of Bengal has also been, especially the riverine towns and cities like Chandanagar, etc. They have also been pretty significant in the history of India and the world and Southeast Asia, basically. So, outside of Calcutta, which are your favorite places of Bengal because of the history or the whatever there? So, Tathagata first.
So two places immediately come to my mind. One is Purulia because I went there in boarding school. I went to Purulia Krishna Mission, and it's fascinating. It's beautiful, and it has a long history, like which goes back to a very long time. And it has like fascinating sites in the forests and everywhere, scattered everywhere. So we all know about Gaur Panchakot, but there are other places too that you can visit and get like the early history of like early as in uh, early historic onwards. So early centuries in the AD onwards, history of Bengal. So that, and then in Gaur and Pandua, which was a massive capital, which was basically described by anyone who visited it as probably the best organized city of India in the medieval period, and the most thriving city of India in the medieval period, because Delhi was in a mess. This is before the Mughal era. Delhi was in a mess because there was a lot of lot of uh, after the Khaljis, there were a lot of very quick changes in power and all of that. So, but Bengal had a political stability, and Gaur and Pandua shows that. Like these are huge capitals which had huge, which still have like remains of those opulent days in the past opulent days. So if we go to Hampi and see it, if we can go to say Anuradhapura in Sri Lanka and see it, because they're very well excavated and well maintained now, I feel sad that we have not done anything for Gaur and Pandua. And the close third is Murshidabad.
Mhm.
Chelsea?
So I'm gonna open it up a little bit. I've spent a lot of time in Bangladesh. Actually, I first started learning Bengali there, in Dhaka, and I really like Old Dhaka. I don't like the modern part of the city so much, but Old Dhaka is really lovely. It's unfortunately become very developed, so there's not many old things that we would consider to be old. So the Mughal structures are very few and things like that. But it was a very important city, and it's really interesting to go around in. And also, just the Bengal countryside in general, anywhere in Bengal. I just love the countryside.
Oh, so Swami Vivekananda wrote something about it that if you go to Bengal and if you just look at a vertical image of the rural countryside, you can see 1,000 shades of green and blue, and it's beautiful. Again,
Hmm.
just it sounded exactly what you said. Like, now, what I'll do is I'll quickly show up a few of the audience comments. They have been coming for a while now. So Nishi Pulugurtha commented about this, that this is one of your best walks too. I think she was talking about your Chinatown walk when you
Hmm.
started.
Thank you,
So
Nishi.
Thank you, Nishi.
then we have Kripa. She generally is the other half of BONGFeed, and she's not here today. She was commending the show being a great one. Thank you both of you for that. She has a question for Chelsea. How and when did you develop this love and fondness for Calcutta?
Yeah, so as I said, I started learning Bengali in Dhaka, and I don't really like Dhaka as a city. Um, the people are lovely, and as I said, I do like old Dhaka, but as a city, I don't like to live in Dhaka. It's just too busy and too crowded and too much smog and traffic and everything. So I had already spent 2 summers in Dhaka before I came here for the first time to learn Bengali. So when I came here, I was struck by how different it was from Dhaka because it's a lot more laid back. It's a lot more quiet, believe it or not. There's less traffic. um, and it's just you can really feel the history as you walk around. So it's palpable in the streets of Calcutta. And that's really um, why I became so fond of Calcutta, because I just I love the fact that you can feel the history as you walk around in the streets, and also that it's a lived-in history. It's not something that's been sanitized and placed, aside as a tourist attraction. The history is lived in. It's really comfortable feeling, and that's a unique feeling that I haven't felt in many other places in the world, actually.
Perfect. Manoj had a comment that by Indian standards, I think Calcutta is best recorded city. Tathagata, do you agree? Probably one of the best, he meant.
So yeah, I think that's probably true.
Right. Manoj just popped in with another comment. You both are heritage warriors. Keep it up. So
Thank you.
Thank you, Manoj.
thank you so much,
Thank you
Manoj.
for your
And Romita Hunt had a comment that old ordnance survey maps. I think that's a cryptic way of telling you that she knows the secrets of research. So
yeah.
thank
Hi Romita. Thank you. Yeah, old maps are awesome. But the question is where you and when you can access them. So that's again another chase, paper chase, basically.
Also, the context in which they were made and the purpose for which they were made, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Perfect. With this, we approach our 45-minute mark, but we'll move to the final section of our session. We generally ask 10 questions of our attendees. These questions are copied verbatim from a show called Inside the Actor Studio, so I don't take any of the. I am not the one who comes up with these, so please don't think I'm that great. So these questions are there to tease out what a person is really like. So what I'll do is I'll ask the question and I'll alternate between both of you so that you can answer, right? So starting with the first question, what is your favorite word? Starting with Chelsea again.
In Bengali or English?
Bengali, please. It would be lovely.
My mind is completely blanking. Give me a moment. Go to him first.
What is your favorite word?
Empathy.
Empathy.
That's a good one. Anando.
Anando. Perfect. What is your least favorite word? It can be in any language, English, Bengali, either.
That's a good question.
Any word that speaks down to another person or to another group in particular.
Yeah, that's the same point. That would
My
be
God, you guys are like the perfect couple, aren't you? It's like one person compliments exactly as others. Right. Please have different answers for the next one. What turns you on? Tathagata, what turns you on?
What? Sorry, I didn't get that.
What turns you on?
Risk. Adventure.
Oh, that's unbelievably predictable. But Chelsea, what turns you on?
Well, you said to give a different answer. So,
Please.
although exploration would be one, I really enjoy looking at the details of things and going into great, just digging around a lot in research and stuff.
Right. In the history of Chong, that is one of the nerdiest answers to what turns you on. Right. So, what turns you off this time, starting with Chelsea?
Being mean to service people.
Yep, that's very common. Tathagata, please don't say the same. I know we all hate it, but
No,
other
yeah, I
people.
mean that too, but like basically backstabbing or trying to pull people down without having the courage to come do it in front of them.
Right. Now coming to Tathagata, what is your favorite curse word? And don't worry, children, don't watch these episodes. What is your favorite curse word?
I use it all the time.
Chelsea?
I don't generally cuss.
Come on. And you are out on
Uh,
the Calcutta streets and you don't cuss? That's not
I
possible.
don't generally. You can ask anyone. I generally don't. I
Or
use
people
curse
treat
words
her,
very
treat her
rarely
nicely because she's a foreigner, right? So people
because
treat
I
her
have white
nicely.
skin. I get treated better.
Hey, Mem Sahib. You don't have a favorite curse word at all?
No, not
Really?
really.
Right. Then what sound or noise do you love?
Hmm.
Whose question?
Let's go with Chelsea because she doesn't have a curse word.
Um, tea being poured.
Tea being poured. My God, you are a perfect Bengali now, man. Tathagata, What is what sound or noise do you love?
Um, well, any song from the Hamilton musical.
Brilliant. And then what sound or noise do you hate? Tathagata?
Uh, Honking.
You live in the wrong city, man. Chelsea?
Just um arguments, like people being really angry at each other.
Yep. And especially when you can't understand what's being said, but you know that the tempers are flying high, and then there's this loud noise in the background, right? Right.
Yeah.
So this goes to Chelsea. What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
Well, this is a bit of a hard question because I actually do have two professions. I also work as a professional academic editor. So that's something that I have done.
Again, continuing the nerdy theme then. Tathagata, what profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
I would like to be a football referee, maybe in the Premier League, if I had the right like I'm too plump to be that. But
No, but I'm pretty sure none of the referees wanted to be referees other than you. They all wanted to be something else. And this is very unique. Perfect. Then, Tathagata, what profession would you not like to attempt? Or something that you would never do?
uh, probably not a gangster, but I don't know if that's the question.
That's also
But
an option.
also probably I won't want to be a doctor because that's a huge amount of personal emotional responsibility, which I don't think I can bear. And I have huge respect for doctors for that.
Chelsea, what profession would you not
Investment
like?
banker.
My God, you hate money, don't you?
I mean, if I'm
Well,
just
we
thinking of
like making it.
anything that would make me bored, and the first thing that comes to mind in terms of careers that would make me bored is investment banker.
Right. The final question. If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates? To Chelsea first.
Good job.
Brilliant. Tathagata?
Mm, that I have been a good human being to most people.
Perfect. That seals it. You are one of the nicest couples that I've ever spoken to outside or inside of Chong because you kind of complement each other perfectly. Thank you so much for this. And just
Thank
before we go, it's been an interesting conversation. I love what you do, and I'm pretty sure there are a lot of people out there who absolutely want to help you out with everything. So again, this is a call to action to anybody who wants to help with Tathagata and Chelsea's hunt for preserving the history and heritage of Calcutta. So, just a final question: what's next? What's coming up from Immersive Trails? Because I know that you have not been doing your physical walks, just being cognizant of the COVID thing out there and not wanting to go ahead. Even though I'm pretty sure nobody would object about it, and you probably get a lot of requests. But what next from Immersive Trails?
Um, so we actually have invested in uh, building a tech platform. So we're building a tech platform and bringing unique experience providers from all over the world to make like well-researched experiences from all over the world accessible to people. So this will be like a Netflix of uh, immersive tours that you can experience from home, maybe before planning to go to places, or if you can't travel, then you can see these places and you know that this is well researched, ethical research. And the other thing is we're working on an app where you can, which will give you more power to skip. Um, now you know the sketchy guides, like often we see sketchy guides in different places, sites, and all of that. So it will give you power to skip those because we will be putting well-researched content as audio tools in that. And then we're also working on our academy, which will give courses, as well as we are working on bringing out some merchandise, which we source directly from the artisans and give a like a large percentage of what we make to them.
Perfect. Thank you so much for joining us today and taking us through a history of Calcutta. And we hope we see more of you. And all the power to you and Calcutta. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you very much. Thank you for having us.
Thank you everyone for joining us today for this session with Tathagata and Chelsea. Again, please support the work that they are doing because it's labor intensive. It takes a lot of heart to go out there in the city and document something that is languishing because we, the inhabitants of the city, have been ignoring our past and our heritage. Thank you so much. Please take care. Please like and follow BONGFeed for more such interesting content. Thank you and have an awesome weekend.